Hello subscribers and non-subscribers, and welcome back to Let's Play Victoria 2. So, a reminder that we are fairly quickly approaching the end of this series. As a result, I want to remind you all that I do have a link down in the description to a Google form asking you all to choose what country you would like to see me play as for my next Victoria 2 series. Right now, Brazil is in the lead with 9 votes, followed by 2 Sicilies, and everybody else who's in the poll, which I believe is Spain, Russia, the Ottomans, Persia, China, Japan, and I think that's it, are currently at 0 votes. So just want to remind you all that that poll is there to go ahead and give you all the opportunity to voice what you would like to see me play as. So that can be found in the description. It should be the very first link, I believe. I'd have to double check that, but I believe it's the very first link. It's not super important what link number it is, but yeah, I think it's the first link. So in this part, we're going to be mostly focused on just attempting to rebuild our military. Well, I say rebuild. It's not wholly inaccurate. We are going to need quite a bit to fight France. I did do a test run, and so the UK and Russia were both still very weak from the war, but France was a pain. And you can tell they have a pretty sizable army stationed here. Let's see. Out of curiosity, who's number 9? You are. And you're currently a pretty decent ways below Italy, which is kind of annoying. The reality is, though, I don't need 2 armies well, rather 4 armies stationed along the Italian border. One, I have 2 Sicilies who can help me out, as long as they're not needing to deal with Garibaldi's red shirts. So you know what, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to bring 2 of these armies up here, the Belgian-French border, because we're going to need them. Long live Germany. Yeah, that's going to take a while. Let's do the thing that slightly decreases militancy. It's not a whole lot, but you know what, it's something. And you know what, I could speed this up. So that's 2. You're currently, so that would be 4 total. So 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Let's spread that out a little, just to hopefully get that army up a little bit faster. Now, yeah, the Russians are actually building armor. I've tested building armor, but I've never really sat down and used it. Also, I don't recall what armor replaces. I think it's artillery that it replaces. I think airplanes, or rather, oh no, they're okay. They are labeled as airplanes, not aeroplanes. Airplanes, I believe, replace cavalry. You know what? The next army I build, I'll build some tanks into it. Well, I say some. I'll probably build it solely with tanks for its artillery, but I don't think it really makes a big difference. The main reason France was a pain was simply because they just have a lot of troops stationed here on the border. Also, I don't believe we have the ability to currently build I'm not allowed to check that because we're conservative. But I don't think I actually have the ability currently to build tank factories. Let me see. Yeah, so I think you have to have researched one of these. No, that couldn't be accurate. Because obviously then I wouldn't be allowed to build tanks at all right now. So I'm really not sure why I'm currently allowed to build tanks. I'm going to be completely honest. I really don't know. But I am currently allowed to build tanks for reasons. I don't know what unlocked it. I legitimately have no idea. Oh, it was probably you. Yes, that unlocked it. So, okay, no, I am allowed to build tank factories. Out of curiosity, do we have any tank factories? I assume the answer is no. That would be correct. Who does, if anybody? The US is the only actual producer of them besides the default that the game typically provides, just so that there is at least some supply no matter what. So the US is currently the only supplier of tanks to the entire world. I can't really do anything to fix that because I don't have because I'm conservative, I'm not allowed to build my own factories. I mean, I could switch the party temporarily just to go ahead and get some built up, or I could use a national focus to do it. I suppose that could be an option as well. If I encourage the automotive industry anywhere, that'll do it. What do tanks need to be built? Let's find somebody who will let me build factories here. So tanks require rubber, electronic part, or rather machine parts, electronic parts, and automobiles. Well, I don't think we have any of that stuff. Are we building any automobiles just out of curiosity? We actually are in Tyrol. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and take one of these military guys, one of these soldier things off, and I'm gonna drop encourage automotive industry in Tyrol. You know, maybe it will do something for us. Probably not, but hey, you never know. I don't think it's actually the best place for that those types of factories, but whatever. We are also going to have tons of rebellions for a number of reasons. One, our infamy is high, and to my knowledge, that does actually increase your rebellion risks. We also have the issue of we kind of have quite a few of non-German peoples. We got the Hungarians, we got the Italians, we got a bunch of people down here in the Baltics and Bosnia and whatnot, and we got the Poles as well. And the Poles are actually quite large now. And technically we got the Danes and whatnot, but the Danes don't really care. It's mostly going to be an issue with the Hungarians, the various Baltic nations, and then the Polish. The Italians also tend to be fairly quiet. I think they've sort of gotten used to being under German rule now. There we go, 16. I slightly miscounted almost. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20. So we're going to build 2 armies with armor. I don't expect those to be built in any reasonable time frame, if I'm going to be completely honest with you all. But we can, you know, still try it. Okay, we apparently managed to get some of the artillery, or some of the armor, so one of them will eventually get built. It just needs canned food, and apparently, despite I believe us being the world's largest producer of canned foods, yeah, by quite a big margin, we apparently fail to properly stockpile enough to do this. Also, it's probably just the case of the game's going down the list and filling in the canned food as well. Yeah, that's probably the main issue. The game's going down that list rather than just spreading it out evenly or anything, because obviously it wants to try and at least get some stuff built. So the game logic says, okay, go down the list, one item at a time, and fill it in with whatever it needs. So the armor got its armor because there was nothing above it that needed armor. So once the rest of these guys get their canned food, that armor should eventually get its canned food. There's the big Polish nationalist uprising that I was expecting, because it happened in my test run, and it was pretty much guaranteed to happen no matter what. Now I am going to have to keep an eye out for up here, because I did during one of these big uprisings lose a lot of my troops in one of the armies up here in Ireland, which is kind of an issue because I kind of need Ireland to, you know, not have issues with its army. Because it's kind of hard for me to want to keep my own troops stationed in Ireland because, you know, the British might invade them. I mean, realistically not going to happen, but whatever. Send the secret police to go and rescue the dude. We'll just put all of our Eastern Front troops to put down the Poles. And continue upgrading our forts as well, because we're going to have to deal with the French invasions. So if I can have all that stuff upgraded reasonably high, that would be wonderful. That armor is still waiting to get its canned food because the game's taking forever to go down the list. So how's Tyrol doing? Have they started building another factory? No, but they have built the automobile, so, you know, that's nice. But I kind of want a tank, if you don't mind. I would kind of like to be able to produce some of our own tanks. Mostly just so that I, you know, at least have some of my own supply. Glory to our youth at the Olympics. Did you lose anybody? You didn't. Okay, wonderful. You know, you just gotta double check for anybody who is less than 58 here. Because that means they did potentially run the risk of having lost a brigade during the uprising, but that does not appear to be the case. Luckily. And I'm gonna double check everybody is not on Hunt Rebels, because I don't need these guys deciding in the middle of a war to turn around and try and deal with rebels. Also, you know what? I got plenty of money. Let's go ahead and drop taxes. I kind of meant to do that earlier. Well, 30% on the rich, going up to 50 for the poor. Because, hey, you know, only the rich are allowed to vote right now, so kind of got to keep them on my side if I can. Lose militancy or lose consciousness in Tyrol? Well, which is a big issue in Tyrol out of curiosity game. Because I want to assume neither. But let's see. What does militancy look like? I mean, I kind of wish I could have a nice little average graph here or something to tell me what the average is for the region. But I am seeing quite a few 10s on militancy, so kind of inclined to say, let's go for that. I mean, that always seems like the better idea anyway. Of course, that doesn't really drop our national militancy a whole hell of a lot, and the Temperance League also doesn't help our militancy either. You know, people are upset that they can't get alcohol. And if they can't get alcohol, they say, well, I guess we're going to have to go ahead and deal with our anger in another way. And so they choose the route of becoming militants. So that's an issue we have to deal with. About the only downside to the Temperance League. The reality is we didn't really need the prestige it gives us. We were always going to become #1 quite easily. But, you know, no reason not to. Wonderful. Some of our armor is finally getting built. Also, out of curiosity, did we actually manage to get all the armor we needed? Surprisingly, yes. They're all just waiting for canned food. So that's good. China wants an alliance. Now, I'm going to be honest with you, China. You're kind of screwed no matter what. You have massive rebellions, Chinese fascists, Chinese communists, more Chinese fascists, tons of Chinese reactionaries, a little bit of Chinese anarcho-liberals tossed in just to mix things up a little. Yeah, no, China is screwed. They've been screwed since the beginning of the game. They've failed miserably to unify. Which if China were to win this poll, obviously, that would be the main thing we need to work on, is attempting to unify. But so long as we can do that, it's all good. Oh yes, I actually completely forgot to go ahead and tell the game to build our naval bases. We should have been doing that much earlier. Like, at the very start of this part, I should have been telling the game to upgrade our naval bases to level 6. Because then we would be able to afford to add dreadnoughts to the Mediterranean fleet, or rather the Austrian Imperial Navy, which is the Mediterranean fleet. Also, a little weird that the Dutch have fascist rebels when they're already fascist as a party. I guess it's just a case of they want to go, those fascist rebels will be attempting to install a fascist dictatorship government type rather than just having the fascists be the ruling party. Because that's the only thing that makes any sense in that case. Also, out of curiosity, how are crises developing? We could potentially get one for Western Afghanistan, which is held by my sphereling Persia. Could potentially get one for Gelderland, although that seems unlikely. It's probably going to be the one in Spain again, or rather in Portugal, currently controlled by Spain. Because that's typically how that plays out in my experience. Italy has literally no friends, which is kind of their own problem, or their own fault, rather. And France wants to be allowed to walk through my territory. The US is losing their war quite handedly. I'm actually going to go ahead and cancel the war subsidies because it's clearly not doing them any good. I mean, it probably never was, but you know, I tried. Their issue is they pieced out the UK, and they took land from the UK, which is fine. But by piecing them out, you lost a lot of your war score that you had in your favor. You should have made the peace with Russia, or whoever is the leader, which is Russia. That's who they should have negotiated with, but no. Stupid game decided to negotiate with a minor member. And as a result, get stuck with the fallout of that. That needs modern banking system. You know what, let's go ahead and get the modern central bank system. Try and decrease militancy a little bit. I need one more armor, and then I can go ahead and break this army up. Here we go. So, all of the armor. All of the Hussars, and then 8 of the infantry, so... And I'm going to send you to Bruges. So there's our little A7V, because that's obviously our graphic for our tanks. I don't know what the hell it is over here for the Russians. Kind of looks like a French tank, one of those Renaults, but I don't know if it is supposed to be that, or if the Russians legitimately had a tank design that just so happened to look very French. I'm guessing that's probably not the case, though. Also, now we have to raise taxes again, but we already gained some control of the upper house as a result of having those, well, I don't know if actually taxes have any real effect on how the party system works in this game. I mean, it makes sense if it did. It really would. But I don't know if it does. I would assume having good finances helps, though. Because then people would take that as a sign that, okay, they know what they're doing. So, are we building any tanks yet? Nope, still just the US, and they're building a decent amount. I'm going to send you to Saarbrücken, or however it's pronounced. Now, I don't know if that armor is actually going to help a lot. Let's see. Out of curiosity, how does it compare to artillery? So 2 siege compared to artillery's no siege at all. So that's helpful nonetheless. 18 attack compared to 3. 10 defense compared to 10. 100% discipline for both. 1 maneuver compared to 1. Max speed of 7 kilometers per hour compared to 7 kilometers per hour. Supply consumption of 550% compared to 545%. So game, if I'm understanding this correctly, you are telling me that armor is legitimately artillery, but actually better. Once you ignore the increased cost. Yes, that's a significant increase in daily cost. Are airplanes better than Hussars? Probably. They gain some defense, but they lose, or they gain some reconnaissance, but they lose basically all of their attack. They lose a little bit of defense. They have basically no discipline, but they have 200% support compared to 0 of Hussars. I don't know what support does, but I'm assuming it's what the engineers do, so that helps with sieges, presumably. 2 maneuver compared to 4 of Hussars, so they're a little bit slower on maneuvering. And they're a little bit slower max speed. But they actually do have a little bit less supply consumption. Of course, their upkeep cost is also substantially higher at 57.633. Also, I don't know why the game is reporting that my military tactics is 275%, considering, according to this, it's 125. Game's a little broken sometimes. Or rather, those are two completely different values that just so happen to have the same name, just to confuse the crap out of everybody. Let's go ahead and make our loans cheaper. We're not going to take out any loans, but hey, it never hurts to make them cheaper. You know, I could take out a nice... I'm not even going to try and figure out how big that is. Actually, let's see, that's what? 2.1 million? That's not a whole lot when you're sitting on 30 million. With nothing to spend it on, I should note. If we were playing as poor old Greece or some other country, sure, it would benefit us. But as a big German empire, or rather across Deutschland, who has a number of spherelings all across the world. So I can lose militancy by letting more pops die, or I can gain some consciousness by letting less pops die. I'll take the consciousness, thank you. And Afghanistan wants to be friends, but Afghanistan's on crack. Spain should be overtaking Italy in the nearish future. I don't know which is better. The policy stands. I say better, but rather, I mean, I don't know which one is going to have more of an impact on our militancy, and I don't really care to go and look. Though if I had looked at the region and then thought about what the population is there, I probably could have figured it out, and it might have been the other choice, actually. Raise taxes on the middle class a little bit. Raise taxes on the poor a little bit. That should be a nice and steady number for us now, right, game? And there's our massive German communist uprising. And we didn't lose anybody in Ireland. At least yet. Out of curiosity, what's the dealio over here in Ireland? We got Jacobins. A little bit of communists, some Polish nationals, Hungarian nationals, Lombardian nationals. And this is why you use guards. Because then the only people you have there are going to be your own primary and actually I think secondary, or rather accepted cultures. Yes, because we accept North Germans. Okay, you know what? I'm gonna manually do you all. It's not quite bad enough that I need to let you all figure it out on your own. I say that though, you know what? No, screw it. I'm not gonna micro you all. I'm too lazy for that. We'll have you take care of there. Reality is I would have preferred to send just the Russian front dudes, or the Eastern front guys. I will micromanage the guys in Italy though, because they don't really need to. Okay, game, let's try this again. Thank you. God. Not properly responding to where I tell you to go. Kinda gets annoying. Actually. Damn it, game. It's these tiny little provinces sometimes that make this a pain. I want you to take care of the guy down there as well. Now, it wouldn't hurt to potentially build an army whose sole purpose is to put down rebellions, just so that I can have my main troops always be focused on dealing with the fronts. And we have the soldier pops, we have the money, we have the brigade support. We could afford to do that if I really wanted to. And it doesn't need to be that many, it can be 2 or 3. Probably just do with 2 actually. But you know, 3 also works. But I'd probably just go with 2. Like I said, that should be more than enough. Some stuff will likely get occupied by the rebels, and I'll have to deal with the fallout of that. But it doesn't really hurt. You know what? We're going to go ahead and do that. We're going to build a couple of small armies. So, I say small armies. They're going to be our normal-sized armies, but, you know, there's just 2 of them. And their sole purpose is to go to be putting down rebellions. So I'll probably station 1 near Vienna, not in Vienna, for the sole reason that if I station them in Vienna, I can't use Vienna as a rally point. Okay, there's my timer. You know, I am actually going to be a little bit picky for these guys, though, because I want to minimize the risk of rebellions in the army whose sole purpose is to put down rebellions. So we're only going to recruit South Germans and North Germans. So we're going to be picky. Like I said. There we go. So that's 2 armies. I will station 1 up in Berlin. And I will station the other one... I don't know. Bratislava, maybe? Like I said, I would station it near Vienna, but not in Vienna. Because I want to use Vienna as a rally point. It's a nice, simple place. Though technically Prague is probably a better rally point, because that's more... That's actually more so in the center. Let's go and actually do that. We're going to move our rally point to Prague. Because that's a little bit more centralized for our entire empire. And so, yeah. So, one of the 2 rebellion putting down armies, whatever we want to call it, is going to be in Berlin. The other is going to be in Vienna. And Prague is our new rally point. Also, let's build forts in Prague. Or rather, Bohemia. But that was my timer that went off while we were going through and queuing up these armies. So that is going to be it for this part. Next part, we might get into another war. We might not. It entirely depends on how this all plays out. I'm inclined to say, though, we probably will get into another war. Mostly because there's no reason for us not to get into another war. And dealing with this little rebellion, or building up these little rebellion armies will give me some time to get my infamy a little bit lower so I can take a little bit more stuff in this next war. Because we've really got to punish the French. They're our biggest threat. Mostly because they've had time to build up, and really the only people France has to worry about, especially considering, you know, this whole, they're allied to the Russians and the Russians are allied to the British, so the British probably aren't going to invade the French because then they'd have to fight the Russians, who are already their allies. So they're not going to declare war on an ally of an ally for the most part. So the way the geopolitics of this all has worked out is that France and the British are not at each other's throat like they sometimes would be. And so France only really has to worry about me and Spain. And Spain's not a particularly big threat. If Italy happened to manage to actually unite the southern half of the peninsula, which is not in my favor, so I'm not going to let that happen, but if by some miracle they manage to do that, it could make them a bit of a threat to France, but not really, because, again, reality is they're still missing a small portion of Italy, and Italy's never really a major power if they don't manage to take over parts of Africa, in my experience. And you've got Big Brother Germany here to go and put down anybody who tries to expand too much, or at least that I don't like expanding. So yeah, France has had tons of time to build up their army. That's the only reason why they're going to be a pain, is because I've let them build up, because I had bigger fish to fry. And now France is a big fish that I have to fry. and they've had time to get into a position where that's going to be difficult. But don't worry, we'll win the war. We might lose a couple of armies. That was the worst thing that happened, was that I lost a couple of armies in that war. But I managed to beat the crap out of the French, and that pretty much knocked them out of the rest of the game, because, you know, there's only less than 20 years left. The game ends right at the start of 1936. So right at the end of 1935, technically, depending on how you want to say it. So we're approaching just about 16 years. We're technically at 18 right now. But we're fairly quickly approaching the end of the game. So there will be, if anything, just a single one extra great war. And this one will be between us and the rest of the Entente, minus the US, because the US is our ally, rather than being allied with the actual Entente. Not my problem, it helps me out. Also, technically, the Entente's missing Italy. Because Italy, I don't know what it is, Italy just has managed to piss off all of their potential neighbors, to the point where they have no friends. Which is very weird, because Italy should have friends. There's no reason for them not to be allied to the French. But that's besides the point. Let's go ahead and end this part here. I rambled on. So I will see you all next time, where we will be likely declaring the war in that part, unless something significant happens that makes it so we can't do that. But the plan will be for us to be starting the Second Great War next part. We probably won't finish it, depending on when the war starts. We'll see. But we should at least fight a little bit of it. But until next time, quick reminder, I do have a Patreon, link that down in the description below. That is the easiest and best way to help support the channel if you wish to go ahead and become one. Helps the channel out immensely. Even if it's only $1 a month that you become a patron at, you get early access to all of my videos. The higher tiers do give you the ability to get your name in game. I'm not doing that for this series because it's just not that big of a deal. But for something like Crusader Kings or Stellaris, you can have a child named after you or a leader named after you, respectively. If I ever do an XCOM Let's Play, that being a patron will give your name priority. But naming there will be opened up to everybody, just because the reality is if I do an XCOM, there's going to be a lot of people dying, so I'm going to need a lot of names. But that'll be it for this part. Like I said, I'll see you all next time, but until then, a goodbye and farewell.